Hey guys, I'm here to talk about the past, present, and future of React Native at Expensify. I hope to share with you some hard lessons learned by Expensify when it comes to mobile development, business, and forming teams. Expensify is a new name to React Native, but we're super excited to be at Chain React, and we're super excited of the future for React Native. So, who am I? Well, I'm Andrew Gable. I've been with Expensify for 8 years. I'm currently a director of engineering at Expensify. 8 years ago, I had just graduated college. I just started working at a super small startup named Expensify. And in a blink of an eye, we're now a public company with millions of users. While at Expensify, I've worked on a Super Bowl commercial with 2 Chainz. I've traveled to 16 countries on many work trips. And I've written features that have brought in multiple millions of dollars of revenue for Expensify. I'm at Andrew Gable on Twitter or on GitHub if you find this talk interesting and you want to follow me there. So I think you may be asking, wait, Andrew, 2 Chainz, Super Bowl, what is going on with that? Well, I'd like to show you.
Whip too refined for the horsepower. Gotta run off a seafood tower. Know that I'm here for a reason. Car so cold that it's sneezing. Day in the life of a ball.
James. Hi, record label finance. Listen, I'm gonna need paper receipts for everything in this video if you wanna get reimbursed.
Nah, I have Expensify for that.
What?
Cause I had to snap it with Expensify. Knock a watch out from Cadabra. Ice whip 2 chicks that look like Cleopatra.
Nice. So, thank you. So we're already at our first lesson that we've learned at Expensify, and that is to take big swings. The worst thing that's going to happen when you take a big swing is you're going to work on something really cool, like we did with 2 Chainz and Adam Scott. I'm not sure if you caught it, but at the very end, there was a QR code. And if you scan that QR code, you are entered to win a supercar, an Audi R8. And so the Expensify mobile team's responsibility was to give away an Audi R8. And so, we took a really big swing a couple years ago, and we did a Super Bowl commercial, and it pushed our entire team to scale our app, to scale our services, to be able to support, such a large campaign. So, as 2 Chainz mentioned, Expensify is an expense app that allows you to take photos of your receipt, say your United receipt when you came here to Portland for Chain React, submit that receipt to your boss, and get reimbursed the very next day. We support both small startups up to multinational companies through our various bank and accounting integrations. And while our customers know and love this app, we actually think that it's the past. Internally, we've actually dubbed this app Old Expensify. And so I want to talk about the past just a little bit and talk a little bit more about Old Expensify. It's built on a closed source mobile framework that was built in 2010, and it supported BlackBerry, yes, BlackBerry, Palm Pre, Windows Phone, iOS, and Android. Our framework was not very mature, and so internally we had to write 3 or 4 times, and it ran sometimes. And so it was really, really difficult to ship new features because we were always writing code for the framework. We were basically writing a new native module anytime we wanted to add a new feature to the old Expensify app. Our layout engine was also something that we struggled with. It was based on XY coordinates, and our designers always yelled at us because our pixels were off, and we really had no flexbox styling or anything nice. One of the additional problems is it was impossible to hire for this. We tried to find candidates that knew how to write JavaScript, of course, but also Java, Kotlin, Objective-C, Swift, and PHP. And if you've ever tried to do that, it is really hard to find someone who wants to write all that. So, with all that in mind, it was a really, really small team, and it brought us to the biggest business problem that we had, which is that the web and mobile product was never in sync. You might not think this is a big problem as an engineer, but it actually is a huge one for us at Expensify. You have to write, double the amount of help articles. You have to train your support staff, hey, this feature isn't on web yet, or this feature isn't on mobile yet. And so we actually ultimately decided that that was one of the biggest reasons to move on from old Expensify. To illustrate some of the challenges that we have, I want to tell you a little story. So in January of 2019, we got an email from Google Play mentioning that we needed to update the old Expensify app to 64-bit on Android. As you can see, we got this email, I think, in January of 2019, and we had till August 1st of 2019. We have a bad habit internally of somewhat ignoring these emails, so sorry if anyone here is on the Google Play team, but we ignored it until the summer of 2019. So we followed the steps, and of course, there's a couple libraries that we needed to update. Some of these might look a little bit familiar to you, but these are all the 32-bit only libraries that we had. We thought, oh, we're just going to have to tweak a couple lines in our build.gradle, and we're going to have 64-bit support. No problem. We'll definitely hit that deadline. Until we figured out one little guy right here, and this is our JavaScript engine that we use on the old Expensify app. And it is V8. It powers Chrome, Node.js, and we were using a version from 2013. And unfortunately, the person who added this did not work at Expensify any longer, and we had no idea how this whole thing worked. And so we realized, okay, we have about a month or two to rewrite our entire JavaScript engine, our bridge, and basically the entire back end of our Android application. And this is not easy. It is not easy to do. And so we started digging into what we could use in the open source community. And so we found a 64-bit version of V8 that is a little bit newer, that's published by the native script team. Unfortunately, a lot had changed in V8 in 9 years or 6 years, and so that didn't work. We found a really cool project named Liquid Core. I think it's still around. It runs on both iOS and Android, but unfortunately we didn't see the performance with this library, and so that didn't work. And so we're getting down to the wire. We're kind of freaking out internally. What are we going to do? Our app's going to get pulled. And so we ended up rewriting a significant part of our bridge and the fundamental backend of our Android application using JavaScript core. This did bring the added benefit of being able to use ES6 and additionally aligning the iOS and Android JavaScript engines to both use JavaScript core. But I think this brings up a good lesson, which is maintaining an internal framework is really, really hard and really, really expensive. So internally, we had a discussion, and we thought, how can we fix this problem? And I think everyone here knows the answer to this problem, which is let's rewrite with React Native. So I want to do a little something fun with you all in the crowd. I want to show you what new Expensify looks like. And so I'd love for you to take out your phones, scan this QR code, and hopefully, if our site is still up, you're going to be dropped into a new Expensify chat room. Nice. So in this chat room, I've linked the full-length 2 Chainz music video. And additionally, I'm hoping that if you guys have any questions, please leave them in there. I'll be happy to answer them after the talk. And lastly, I left some little details in there that I'll talk about later. So feel free to download the app and hop in the room and ask me questions you might have. So new Expensify is going to support all the existing use cases of old Expensify, such as scanning receipts, sending them to your boss, and getting reimbursed the very next day. It's going to be built on React Native and React Native Web. It's actually going to solve a lot of our problems for multiple different reasons. Number one, it's solving the problem of web and mobile being out of sync because we are able to reuse 100% of our code using React Native and React Native Web. Whenever we ship any pull request, we make sure that that feature is going to work both on web, mobile, and desktop. We can now officially write once and run anywhere, of course, using React Native, and we're spending way less time working on a framework and way more time shipping code to our users. We can leverage our entire engineering team because internally, a lot of our web engineers already know React, and so switching over to React Native is super easy. And lastly, New Expensify is 100% open source. You can view all of the code and all of our bugs at github.com/expensify/app. So please check that out. The third lesson that we've learned is open source is absolutely amazing. Open source has enabled New Expensify to ship so much faster than we ever thought was possible. And I'd like to show you a couple of examples of why that's true. So first off, we use a local Portland vendor named Airship for our push notifications. We had a crash with our push notification library. I don't know, investigate event emitter add event on Android. And so Ryan works at Airship, and this is an open source GitHub issue that you all can check out. And he's able to hop in, diagnose the crash, release a new version of the Airship npm dependency that we use, and mention, hey, it's fixed, right? And so think about how fast that is as a developer compared to reaching out to their PM, to then their PM reaches out to Ryan, and then they need to get your logs, all this stuff. It is way faster to do it this way. And so we're able to work much faster with our vendors using open source. Our vendors are also able to review our updates and configuration changes, which could never have happened with our closed source app. The new Expensify codebase is already being used in blog posts and examples. So here's an example. CallStack used the new Expensify codebase in order to write a Medium article on how to write tests using AI, which was super cool. So definitely check that out. And we've been pushed internally to improve ourselves. So internally, we write a ton of JavaScript, but have been encouraged by the community to adopt TypeScript. And that's something that we're actually doing right now, is migrating our open source app from JavaScript to TypeScript. Yes, TypeScript fans, yeah. Internally, we did not actually allow the use of hooks in any of our internal code base, just because we were not super familiar with it, which I know might be blasphemous to some here. But this is another good example of something that the community is pushing us to adopt. And so we're adopting hooks. And lastly, we're writing all of our components in a modern functional style, which is something that, again, we just haven't done internally at Expensify a whole lot. So all these code improvements were bought by the open source community in our Slack channel, and we have a much more modern code base because of the open source community. So thank you for all of that hard work in pushing Expensify to adopt these features. We've been growing a super vibrant community of external developers, including vendors like Infinite Red and over 1,100 freelancers. We pay for bug bounties and for people to fix issues in open source. And we took a group of these top contributors to Curacao in March for a week-long conference to discuss the changes that are coming up to React Native and how to better improve the new Expensify codebase, for example, TypeScript. There are over 250 attendees, and we had a ton of fun, as you can see, learning about React Native. We hope to do this conference every single year and cannot wait for 2024. The best part of it is the community is growing. We don't just take fancy trips. We actually get a lot of shit done with our community of contributors. 2022, as you can see, was a huge year. We fixed almost 2,000 bugs, and we paid out $1.2 million, all to open source contributors via our GitHub repository. So here's a little preview of the future that we've been working on together, and we hope you might be able to join us. Nice. So what does the future look like for Expensify and React Native? Well, first of all, it looks super bright. One of the largest hurdles we're going to have is shipping new Expensify to customers. And while we have pushed the app to the app stores, we actually don't have a ton of customers on the new Expensify app. So we're going to have to be migrating all of our users from our old Expensify app to our new Expensify app. One of the plans that we have in place is we're going to be switching these users via something we internally have been calling the switcheroo. We want to keep all of our existing App Store listings, like our 100K reviews on iOS and our multiple millions of downloads on the Google Play Store, which help our App Store optimization, our search engine optimization. So what we're going to do is we're just one day going to switch the code bases, and all of our users are going to migrate to new Expensify. Additionally, in the future, we're hoping to be fully migrated to the new architecture. We're hoping to be migrated by the end of this year. We have submitted around 20 open source PRs to different repositories to add Fabric and Turbo modules. And so here's all of our dependencies, and there's a bunch more that we've submitted pull requests to add Fabric and Turbo module support. Here's something in the future that we haven't actually perfectly figured out, but I wanted to discuss it and see if this is of interest to the open source community. We think that Expensify is a good member of open source by always submitting our pull requests upstream. However, I'm hoping in the future to take it one step a little further. I'm hoping that we're going to be able to sponsor every single line in our package.json via a GitHub sponsorship. While we haven't worked out all the details internally, something I'm thinking about is maybe having some sort of scale of how important certain dependencies are, and sponsoring them, as I said, via a recurring sponsorship. I think this is really going to help to bridge the gap between consumer and maintainer of dependencies, hopefully bringing some fruitful conversations between Expensify and open source on how to better improve dependencies for the entire community. Lastly, I want to show you a little vision of what Expensify and React Native is building together. One of Expensify's core tenets is to save the world, which I know can sound crazy to some, but it's actually something that we're really serious about. This is a use case that is actually really personal to me, as my sister is a kindergarten teacher in California. She unfortunately has to use her own money to pay for school supplies for students, as is common in the United States. Here's a mock-up of something that we're going to be adding to the new Expensify app in the future. It's a screen that's going to ask you to help teachers in need, where our nonprofit Expensify.org will help teachers with donations from Expensify users. As someone who donates, you'll be added to a chat room and part of a conversation with the teacher to be able to see your donations working in real time. So, in summary, what we've learned at Expensify is, number one, take big swings. Number two, building an internal framework is really, really hard, so use React Native. And number three, the open source community is amazing, and we cannot wait to build the future of the new Expensify app with all of you. So, thank you.